main reason I wanted to do this Daniel fast was to eliminate, hopefully, my addiction to fast food. I wanted to really separate myself from all of the worldly foods that I have been consuming pretty much my whole life, and I just really wanted to get back to the basics of eating just in a healthy way, honestly, and not be so dependent on breakfast, lunch, and dinner being Chick-fil-A, Panda Express, Chipotle, all those meals, which I honestly eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I understand that maybe this was a very extreme change for me overnight, but that's kind of what happens. My mind just gets made up and I want to do something and try it immediately. If you don't know what the Daniel fast is, it's a biblical diet that was inspired by Daniel in the Bible, who claimed to the king that he would do better eating whole foods, plant-based essentially, instead of like all the other fighters who were going to go to battle, who the king said you can have meat and wine and really eat a feast every single night. Daniel was convinced that he would do better eating basically how God would eat, in a more healthy, clean fashion. So the Daniel fast is basically a vegetarian diet, but there's no sugar, no alcohol, no caffeine, no white bread, no meats of any kind, so again, fish, poultry, shrimp, no eggs, no milk, no dairy, and basically all you can eat is beans, whole wheat rice, quinoa, lentils, any fruit, any vegetable. You can have potatoes, which was really nice, and water, and I think that's pretty much in tofu. Really a healthy, whole grain diet is what it is. And so for me, I was really looking forward to changing up how I was eating and really get creative with my meals. I will say on this Daniel fast, I did have 3 cheat meals, and that's upsetting, but at the same time I want to look at the positive and that I was able to do this and complete it. But I did have caffeine. I did have caffeine 3 times, and I did eat meat twice, and so I just want to be fully transparent that I didn't do the Daniel fast in its 100% entirety to the book, to the T. That's why I wanted to share my experience with you guys, and that way maybe it would help you when you get started. And basically I'm going to take my own advice and try this fast again in the future, but I'll be more equipped to know what worked and what didn't work realistically. I want to touch on 2 points of the Daniel fast because I do believe there were 2 different reasons that made this fast interesting and kind of hard. First topic I want to talk about in the Daniel fast, which was the hardest part of the fast. It wasn't so much the food, it was the caffeine withdrawals. I'm honestly more tired than hungry. I'm probably gonna go to sleep because going through these caffeine withdrawals. So yeah, honestly I am so tired. It was really hard to get through today with no coffee, any caffeine, and I'm honestly probably gonna go to bed right after this. It's like 8 o'clock right now, but I anticipate being in bed by like 9. That's my timer. 8:23 is what time it is. So yeah, I think by like 9:30 I want to already be like in bed with melatonin. It's going okay. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye. I didn't know that caffeine withdrawals would be so hard on me and to get through that. So that's really what I want to touch on. Number 1, that the caffeine withdrawals and lack of coffee or lack of any caffeine was the hardest part. And it wasn't so much that I was craving coffee every morning and that's what made it hard. It was that coffee and caffeine specifically literally alters your brain. And I want to break down some facts for you guys because I think it's important that you know why caffeine is so honestly detrimental to us. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about caffeine because I had no idea. When you're doing a caffeine detox, there are side effects, and I had no idea that the side effects were going to be so strong. You guys have never been off of caffeine for a long period of time, you might not know what can happen. So just tell you guys a couple of the symptoms that you can get from a caffeine withdrawal. Headaches. My headaches were off the charts. I've never had headaches like that. It was so severe, and it was really hard to work with a major headache each of those days, and I did have to take some aspirin to help alleviate the pain. We'll get to that though. But caffeine withdrawal symptoms: headaches, fatigue and drowsiness, yes. Decreased alertness, yes. Irritability and mood swings, yes. I felt that on day 2. Day 2 and day 3, absolutely, I was a bear. I was so upset. I didn't understand why I was so upset. Now I understand why I was, but I was even like praying to God. I was like, why am I so angry? I didn't really put 2 and 2 together. Again, in the moment, I didn't understand it. Looking back, it was a caffeine withdrawal. Difficulty concentrating, definitely. I'm a hairstylist as my day job, and when I was trying to do hair, I honestly just kind of spaced out and zoned out, and there were times where I felt my eyelids were getting kind of heavy because I didn't have caffeine. I was quite tired. And it says depressed mood. I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I definitely was angry. So other things, if I had to describe though what a caffeine withdrawal feels like, it is pretty much like the worst hangover you've ever had. I only had, I think, 2 hangovers in my whole life, and your head is pounding. All the lights are really bright. Everybody's really, really loud. You're irritable, like it says. You're just angry. You're annoyed. You're on edge. And going back to the headaches, it was so severe that I was just constantly pressing my forehead, pressing my temples, and I would just come home, turn off all the lights on, put the blanket over my head because I wanted it completely dark because any light was hurting my head. Again, it was really, really severe for all 6 days. And during those 6 days, I kept saying, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you doing this? It's not fun. It's not pleasant. And you're quite literally putting yourself in pain. It felt like I was dying, and not to be dramatic, but I also felt nauseous. I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt sick. Again, it just was a miserable, miserable time. Which is why I'm saying the caffeine withdrawals was the hardest part of the Daniel fast, because it quite literally was affecting my body. I do want to point out one major thing about caffeine that I didn't know, and is that caffeine actually affects your brain. Let me explain. Okay, so I'm going to read this completely off of Google because I was Googling so many things like, why does my head hurt? Why do we need a caffeine? What does caffeine do? Because it was just so uncomfortable that I just needed some reasons as why this was happening to my body, because my body has never felt like this before, and I can't believe that detoxing from something could cause such adverse side effects. So if you didn't know, caffeine withdrawals occur because caffeine blocks adenosine receptors in the brain, which normally promotes sleep and relaxation. When caffeine is abruptly stopped, these receptors become more numerous and sensitive, leading to increased adenosine activity and resulting in withdrawal symptoms like headaches, fatigue, and irritability. So basically, also caffeine constricts blood flow vessels to the brain. Let me say that again. Caffeine constricts blood vessels in the brain. One of your most vital organs. Caffeine affects your brain. When caffeine is withdrawn, these vessels can dilate, potentially causing a surge in blood flow and contributing to headaches. So the fact that it is constricting blood flow to your brain, that's huge, you guys. And that's what kind of really freaked me out, that, oh my goodness, I've become so dependent on a substance that is affecting my brain, affecting the blood flow to my brain, and the fact that when you don't have it, the blood vessels, what does it say? They constrict. and so it affects the surge of blood in your brain, which is just wild to me. I mean, it all makes sense though, you know, that we've become so dependent on it and we needed to wake up. All of these little things, you know, we wake up and we get coffee. I don't know if it just hits at a certain point or it just becomes part of our routine. But that in itself was the hardest part of this Daniel fast, you guys, was because I thought it was just me being dramatic, but no, it's literally affecting your brain when you don't consume caffeine. So it is really serious, the fact that we have become a Starbucks world, a Dunkin', everything runs on Dunkin', all that kind of stuff, right? Like, coffee is actually really bad for us. So let's talk about my hiccups. I did have, I believe, 3 different instances where I was a bad girl and had caffeine. It was also on the days where I had my cheat meals. I cheated on Saturday because it is my longest work day. I got Chick-fil-A breakfast, which is my favorite breakfast to go get. I just get an egg biscuit and hash browns when I go, so I don't consume any meat. Naturally, I just don't get meat in the morning sometimes there. And then I get a half and half sweet tea. I started doing that. So there is a little bit of caffeine in the half and half tea. So that was mistake number 1. I also ended up going to Panda Express on one of my lunch breaks at work and got a Coke. And lastly, my other cheat drink was Coke on my husband's birthday, which was the last day of the fast. Again, that's why I'm saying, like, the last day was also the day that I pretty much, I would say I didn't even complete it because I went straight into Cokes. I had chicken that day, all this stuff. So my 6 days were a little touch and go, but I at least tried. Let's start talking about the food now. So now that we've got the caffeine out of the way, let's talk about the actual meals that I was consuming every single day. As a whole, I want to talk about how the food experience was. And again, it wasn't great. It wasn't great. The food was very bland. I have a lentil soup in one of these clips, and that was probably the most disgusting thing I've eaten in my life. It's probably the grossest thing I've had in my life. And I did eat like 5 or 6 bites of it, but it just wasn't good. One of those days I had oatmeal, and again, oatmeal's never going to hit for me like a Chick-fil-A biscuit and hash browns will. So it's been really hard to remind myself that maybe not every meal needs to be amazing and be so good. Maybe every meal won't taste that great. You know, if you think about it, the reason we are so addicted to fast food is because it's so good, it's so yummy, it's so convenient, it's fast, it's, you know, what we've been eating our whole lives. And I'm not always going to be super anxious to go have oatmeal or quinoa and brown rice, you know. That was part of it too, was just realizing that, oh my gosh, this is a little harder than I expected to change what I'm eating. But I learned so much through this experience too, and that's why I do want to try this Daniel fast again, but with a little bit of different parameters and meal prepping more in the future. I will talk about that in a future video. I just went grocery shopping again, and so I really wanted to kind of now do a part 2 of how I'm trying to implement my own foods and meal prepping instead of just relying on things that I'm not naturally gonna like. I want to make healthy versions of my favorite meals and have those for breakfast instead, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I will say that while I was eating on the Daniel fast, I realized that a lot of these meals weren't that great. And I tried really, really hard to be open-minded. I did eat everything in some capacity, but honestly, I didn't finish pretty much any meal that I had. There was only one meal out of everything that I ate that I actually enjoyed, but even still, if you were to ask me, do I want that versus pizza or a burger, I'm going to pick the pizza and the burger over the brown rice and quinoa and my veggie patty. That was my favorite meal, and the veggie patty was one of the gray area items that I wasn't even sure if I was allowed to have. But again, I selected the veggie patties just to give me some sort of like chicken type feel, because I did miss that. I did miss eating meat. I was vegetarian for almost 4 years, so I can be vegetarian, but at the end of the day I realized I never really felt satiated. I didn't feel satiated because there was a lack of meat, but not only that, I didn't feel satiated because I really didn't finish any of my meals. I could not finish that lentil soup. I could not finish this like Mediterranean quinoa chickpea bowl, you know? And so that's why I was telling myself, and that's why I'm telling myself that I'm going to attempt this again, but meal prep in ways that I actually like meals. You could also have no bread, so that was a little tricky because there were some times that I wanted to maybe use some bread just to eat some of these items and scoop it up in bread or scoop it up in a tortilla to make it a little bit more, make it a little bit yummier, something I could eat, but I just couldn't. So I do feel like I wasted a lot of food because I didn't finish the meals. And then in turn, you're just really hungry, and then you're not feeling great, you feel weak. So you're already not, you know, you're already fasting, but then you feel weak because I wasn't really eating meals, and I could only eat so much fruit and bananas and strawberries before I'm like, okay, this isn't filling enough. And that's what ultimately led to me getting Panda Express one day, because I was like, I need actual food. I need a hot meal with some chicken and some rice, which is why I think Panda Express is like, I kind of don't get mad at myself for having Panda Express because it feels like meal prep chicken, and I get the Kung Pao chicken, so it's literally like all veggies, some chicken and rice, you know? Man, now I'm talking about it. I want Panda Express. But like I said, it was harder on days when I had to go to work because it does require a lot of energy to go to work. And even though I was snacking on my almonds and snacking on my bananas, there does in my mind become a level of you actually need some sustenance to keep you full and give you energy. That's one thing, that's like one takeaway I took from this too, is that food is energy. It's essentially what it is. And we're eating so many meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, forever and ever and ever. And that at the end of the day, this is just supposed to give us energy to perform. I feel like that Daniel fast was a great trial run. I want to do things differently. I don't know if I'll do 6 days, 7 days again. Honestly, I think that I just want to start maybe doing a 3-day fast every, like, once a month and just reset. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is me signing out. Bye.